I like to answer that with an illustration, kind of an analogy out of history. The largest log jam in the world's history happened at Little Falls, Minnesota on the Mississippi River. At the point of the jam, it was 7 miles deep up the river, a half a mile wide, and they estimate the thickness of the logs was around 60 to 70 feet deep into the water. It took 150 people, took a steamboat, in 6 months to break that log jam. They estimate there's probably over 4 billion linear feet of wood that was stuck into that thing. You know, in the fall of every year in those logging operations, you'd have a group of guys go up to establish base camp, and then they'll cut a few trees down and get ready to go. And then when hard winter would come in, the rest of the logging operation would come in. They would spend all winter felling logs, cutting them down, chopping them in about 16-foot sections. They would stack them up on the riverbed, and when the spring thaw would come in, they would push the logs into the river, and down they would go to the logging operation. You know, when we look at where culture is today, when we look at the demographic reality of our culture, depending on the studies that you read, it's estimated that anywhere from 60 to 70% of C-level executives, CEOs, CTOs, CIOs, those types of positions, those men and women are going to retire in the next 5 to 7 years. They're not just change jobs, they're going to actually leave what they do to go into retirement. The federal government estimates that by 2016, almost half or over half of federal employees are going to be eligible to take retirement. When we were doing the Barna research and interviewing pastors all over the country on the topic of succession planning, one of the pieces of information that Barna gave me in 2010 was that the median age of pastors is 52 years old in 2010. You know, what that tells me is when you look at the sheer number of people that are headed in our culture, that are headed to this retirement age where they've got to transition from their working career into retirement, man, we have got a significant logjam brewing. I'm absolutely convinced that succession planning is one of the biggest stewardship challenges that the church must deal with in the coming decade. You know, these millions of people that are going to be retiring and transitioning out of their working careers into the next season of their life, millions of those people go to church every Sunday. And many of them are in churches where pastors are needing to navigate the reality of a succession transition plan in the church. And when these people in the business world, in the business community come into our churches and the transitions and the succession plans are not being talked about or navigated very well in the church, then those people who are God-honoring citizens, when they go back to their sphere of influence in culture, in their companies or in the federal government or at the cities or at the schools where they work, if they don't see what healthy, God-honoring transitions can look like, then they have no baseline for how to implement that season of transition for their context as well. I just think this is one of the most important challenges facing the Christian community and culture at large in our country, and I believe pastors and ministry leaders are in the prime place to influence how culture responds to this issue that is facing America as a nation.